Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with host Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please subscribe and share so you never miss an episode. Search for us on your favorite podcast app, or you can find the podcast on jimmyhinton.org and findingahealingplace.com. Please rate our show, subscribe, and share so we can spread the word. If you would like to support us and get exclusive rewards, go to patreon.com/speakingout. Find a tier that best fits you and join as a patron of the podcast. Now let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast with host Jimmy Hinton.
And Jimmy's mom, Clara.
So hot in the news today, this bombshell report. Over 300,000, what is it? Here, I'll just pull it up now. ABC News, French report 330,000 children victims of church sex abuse. And this is just in France alone. Scrolling down, I'm going to read from this a little bit. Well, let me go back. We'll go back to our introduction. Thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. You guys are incredible, and you are the reason that we are able to go on and do this podcast, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
We do, and we are so happy to bring you this podcast, not just in audio form, but in visual form, too. And that is because of you.
You get to see this kind of stuff.
Thanks, Jimmy. Absolutely. Here you go.
Yep, if you're not watching, you didn't get to see what I just did.
Yep. Gotta look, yeah, you gotta see the whole picture here.
So, yeah, this, I mean, honest to goodness, there are two major scandals by the two biggest churches in the world, the two biggest denominations. You have the Catholic Church, this bombshell report, which we're going to talk about this podcast. Then, of course, the SBC, they are in absolute internal disrepair right now, and it kind of is reminiscent of what's going on within the government. These parties are imploding, and they're just they're attacking each other, and the disunity is at an all-time high. And I'm just looking at this and thinking, how did we get here? Why is it so difficult for churches to manage and report and address abuse in the church? I'm telling you, I've been doing this for 10 years. And I get so infuriated at these stupid cover-ups. They're so unnecessary, and they're so intentional.
I've said it before. I'll say it again. And I'm sure it's not in all the cases, but I think in a lot of cases, Jimmy, when you open that can of worms, it's a good old boys club, because if so-and-so gets exposed, then this means on up the line are going to get exposed. And they don't want that. And
it's crazy.
And you'll see here these numbers, this 330,000, that blew me away, because when we think of big masses, we often don't think of that as individuals. That is as many individuals that were harmed as in a city, a large city. Large city. Yeah. And when you think of all the pain, the hurt, the agony, the ripple effect of generational pain, the distancing of families, and all the distancing from God because of it, that's how we got where we are, from covering up sin.
Yeah.
I do believe.
And not just sin, crimes. I mean, these are legitimate crimes.
Yes, crime. Yeah.
And that, it's so infuriating. And I want people to understand, I mean, this is so widespread that I don't even know. I was browsing Twitter and Facebook today, and hardly anybody is even mentioning this bombshell report. And I'm thinking, this is like worldwide huge news.
Do you remember us doing a podcast on when something is repeatedly in the news, it gets watered down? And I think that's what's happened. It is so commonplace now. Catholic Church, we identify with abuse. We truly do, because of the big Pennsylvania scandal, and then
the Boston Globe report back in the early 2000s.
Absolutely. So now this is kind of like, wow, they did it again. It didn't impact as the first reports did. And that's a shame
Yeah.
because as the message gets watered down, so does the response.
Yeah.
And I think you grow accustomed to hearing it, sadly,
Yeah.
and it doesn't prick the hearts of people like it should.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I mean, my prediction is that probably not as much in the Catholic Church because they just really have their grip on people. And I'll talk about that in a little bit too. Like this whole cult of Pope worship and, well, I'll talk about it now while I'm on the subject. I think it's just so crazy. And we have the same thing in Protestant Christianity, evangelical churches. You have the celebrity pastor syndrome, which is no different than the celebrity pope syndrome. And I was watching some of these videos just this morning. I was watching some of these videos of people fainting, literally passing out when the pope goes by, and it's like this stardom. They get starstruck, awestruck. They literally worship the ground he walks on. He's idolized, and he can do no wrong, and he knows it. The guy knows it, and every single pope has known it. And if you watch how they act like they're so humble, and he stops. They call it the there are all these articles, and if you just look this up, like Pope Mobile stops to whatever, you'll find all these articles about the Pope Mobile stops when he's going through the motorcade, and he gets out and kisses a disabled child on the forehead and gets back in climbs back up, ascends the Pope Mobile. I mean, those are the articles writing it this way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right,
Yes.
so the guy stops. And it kind of reminds me, I mean, it really reminds me of what Trump was doing there towards the end of his presidency, really showboating. And, he had his motorcade take him out of the hospital. And, the guy's sick with COVID. And he's going around in the motorcade, like waving to people. And they're all like, fainting when he goes by. And I'm like, this whole notion of
It's
celebrity
people worship.
stardom
It's just people worship.
is bizarre.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And we were at a baseball game. We went to a Pirates game, the last game of the season on Sunday, and my kids love the Pirates, and we all just kind of got into baseball this year. Literally, I have always hated baseball my whole life. This year we all really got into it.
Well,
and we
because
love
you
it,
have
and
two
it's
little
fun.
boys who are definitely into it.
We
yeah.
do. So we go to the game, and my youngest, who's 6, he had it in his mind that he was going to get an autograph. And so we explained, we were like, all right, we're going to try to get an autograph,
Yeah.
but chances are you're probably not going to get an autograph. Well, in a 6-year-old mind, failure is not an option, right?
That's correct. That is correct.
So we go down after the game, and we're standing there. His favorite player is Reynolds. And Reynolds is literally, I mean, from me to you or closer away. And he's standing right in front of us. And he hands a signed ball to a man, an Army vet, who was standing. I literally was shoulder to shoulder. I was talking to the guy.
Aw.
And Brian Reynolds comes up and hands him a signed ball. And the guy puts it in his pocket. And my 6-year-old is just, like, you can see the defeat on his face. Well, he's handing a marker out. And then Reynolds ends up going away. And then Brian Gimmel comes by. And Gamble grabs the marker from, I don't remember if Isaac had it or if Eden was holding the marker, but he grabs my kid's marker and starts signing other people's memorabilia,
that hurts.
right?
That hurts.
And
yeah.
poor Isaac is like, by this point he's like, and the poor 6-year-old is just like, he had his heart set on it. So anyway, Gamble ends up, he's like, guys, really, I gotta go. He's like, one more signature and that's it. Well, it was somebody else's thing that he signed, so he walks away. And Isaac, my 6-year-old, has this meltdown. He just starts sobbing. And he's like, I wanted to sign so bad. And I grabbed him. I got him out of that chaos real quickly. And we teach our kids, like, no idol worship. Like, that's not cool. So my wife was like, this is not okay. And, she talked to our kids about, it's fine if you want to get an autograph, but they're people just like you and me. Mm-hmm. I did a wedding this last weekend, and a guy was like nervous about asking me how he's going to introduce me. He's like, "Is it Reverend?
Oh,
Is it Pastor?"
yeah.
I was like, "It's Jimmy."
Yeah.
I was like, "Everybody calls me Jimmy.
Yeah.
Just introduce me as Jimmy."
Yeah.
And he was like, "You're the coolest pastor." He's like, "I've been doing weddings for years." And he was a DJ. He's like,
Okay.
"You're the coolest pastor." I'm like, "No, I'm really not that cool. You can talk to Granny if you think I'm cool."
I'll fill him in.
But it's this whole notion. He's like, "You'd be surprised how many pastors get angry if I introduce them wrong.
Yeah.
If I give them a wrong title." He's like, "I've had people get irate with me."
Absolutely. That's always been a big thing.
And I think this is a big contributor to this
yeah.
problem. This is why the Catholic Church, the SBC, you name the denomination, they're able to get away with cover-ups because people think that the leaders can do no wrong, and they treat them that way, and the leaders exploit that. And that's how they're able to both abuse and cover up abuse.
I was sick reading these articles when I see the damage that was done, the harm that was done. One of the guys from the Catholic Church, let me look here. Okay, he acknowledged this now defrocked priest, Bernard Bryant. He acknowledged abusing more than 75 boys for decades. Can you imagine the harm, the anguish that was caused to these boys? And people knew, obviously. They knew
Right.
what was going on. And later, the article goes on to say many victims will not, put their name to abuse because they know absolutely nothing is going to get done.
Yes.
So they are remaining silent.
Yes.
They just have said, nope, don't count me among the 330,000.
I know.
Because nothing is going to be done. That is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It truly is.
And that was the thing that I picked up in these different articles. You have one there printed off
Right.
from, I think that one's Fox News.
Yes, it is.
And then this one that I pulled up before, I'll pull it up again. This is ABC News. And, this is the thing, is the statute of limitations. It's the same thing we ran into in Pennsylvania. Thousands of victims. And there's nothing that we can do about it because of statute of limitation issues.
Right.
But the damage is there. And so here, this guy, of course he can admit to it and be like, I abused 75 children. I can't imagine in my wildest dreams, if you have a murderer who has murdered 75 people.
And repeatedly does the act, that criminal act, over a period of all those years. Add that up, it is insane.
That's
it
a
really
serial
is.
killer. That's a demented, deranged person. And here we have people who have 75 victims, and that's normal for sex offenders.
And that's what I was thinking too. That number is not exaggerated. That is a normal number.
I know. That's average.
Right. And it just, I think we don't take time to think it through, Jimmy. I think it's glossed over now. I think these are just numbers that are thrown out there to most people, sadly. And it's like, oh, wow, so they did it again.
Well, I think if we didn't take murder seriously, if we didn't take that crime incredibly seriously, there would be a whole lot more serial killers out there.
Oh, absolutely. Oh,
and I think that's part of the issue. We've created this culture of cover-up, and we've embraced, especially in the church, we've embraced the abuser and said, well, but for grace, And they invite them back into the church. The Catholics were notorious for this, sending them off to these retreat centers to be rehabilitated, which was nothing more than a glorified vacation. And then in the Altoona Johnstown Diocese here in Pennsylvania, that report in 2016, the grand jury report, we discovered this massive vault underneath the church.
Right.
Where they knew that these pedophile priests were being passed from church to church to church, and they would put in their records that they had code words for it, and they would say they were vacationing, or they were, I forget what some of the terminology they used, but it was never had anything to do with abuse, though that's why they were being shuffled from church to church or to these rehabilitation centers.
It is horrible. Just the whole idea of raping a child.
Yeah,
Raping.
I just to
And
think
and
about
that's what
doing
we're
it is
talking
bad
about. Well,
enough.
I mean, we might as well split the pea open and say what it is, what's
Yeah.
inside. It's raping a child repeatedly, raping these children. It's wrong. It's always been wrong. It's horrific, always been horrific. Yet it's been covered up for years upon years upon years upon years.
And normalized.
And
In covering it up, it's been normalized.
and I think you hit the nail on the head a lot, because these people that wear black robes or collars around their necks or whatever are put on these pedestals, and the average
I know.
person would never question their actions.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, I grew up in a almost all Catholic town where idols were literally walked along the streets. The Italian 16th, Our Lady of Mount Carmel, for those of you who are Italian Catholics, you know what I'm talking about. People die for that celebration. They come from all over the world to our town for that celebration. But and pinning money, just till the idols are done being pushed, that they're so heavy with money that it takes multiple people to push the carts with the money. True. But I think everything's been watered down because these people are on, you can't question them. It would be wrong to question their actions. And for those who were being raped, I'm sure they got shut up very quickly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll give you an example of
this.
this. This is a real contemporary, a very current thing. I've been doing weddings, right? So the past 2 weekends in a row, one I did videography for, professional videography, and then the next one, just a couple days ago, I did a wedding that I officiated. Okay, so, and I've officiated a lot of weddings. Easily 60 plus weddings. Easily, probably more than that. It's probably more closer to 100.
Yeah, sure.
So one of the things that comes up over and over and over is I have photographers who will come up to me at these weddings, and they'll ask if it's, like, real sheepishly, they'll ask if it's okay to go over to certain areas, and am I allowed, is it okay, sir? And they're calling me sir, and I'm like, first of all, knock that crap off. Like, call me Jimmy. I am not, I don't want people to bow down to me in any capacity. Like, that's nonsense. Secondly, you have a camera, it's their wedding, go wherever you want. If you want to go walk right in front of me during the wedding, and that's where you can get the best shot from, as long as that's okay with the family of the bride and groom, knock yourself out. I can't begin to express to you, this is not an over-exaggeration, how many photographers have been in tears thanking me, saying, we have never been treated this kindly before by pastors, by officiants. And I'm like, okay, we have a cultural problem. Like, this is a glaring red flag to me, that we have a cultural problem where I have to contain my... I have to contain my Christianity.
Yes.
I was going to say I think I can say that.
You're riding a fine line there. Okay.
You have these people who they demand loyalty and they demand respect, and they say, this area is off limits and you're not allowed in this section, and they're really mean about it. They're nasty about it.
Oh, yeah.
That's not okay. We've created this culture within the church where people, they tolerate that.
Pastoral arrogance.
And I can tell you,
yeah.
I've had other pastors try to flex those spiritual muscles to me. Let me tell you, that doesn't fly with Jimmy Hinton, because I put it right back in their face, and I'm like, who do you think you are? And I talk to them that way.
I know, yeah.
Because it's not okay. That kind of abusive leadership, where I call it leadership, use that term loosely, that's why we have this culture where people are so terrified to speak up about their idol and this man of the cloth, this person who can do no wrong. And it's I don't know, it's a very toxic
It
culture.
is, and to those being abused by those people, it shatters faith. It truly does. It is
It destroys
it
them.
destroys. Yes, it really really has an impact, and I think we are now experiencing the result, the fruit, so to speak,
Yeah, we're
of
reaping what's been
of
sowed
all the
for
corruption.
generations.
Yeah, we really are, and now we see the chaos and the brokenness, the anguish. We see it all, and churches don't know what to do.
Yeah,
What do we do with this now? We
yeah,
have this big ball of nastiness. What do we do with it?
yeah. I'm going to read a little bit from this report because I think this is really important. Okay, so victims of abuse within France's Catholic Church welcomed a historic turning point Tuesday after a new report estimated that 330,000 children in France were sexually abused over the past 70 years, providing the country's first accounting of the worldwide phenomenon. And I think we can thank all of our brave survivor friends who we know who are part of this Pennsylvania grand jury report. That opened up the door for
Right.
people around the world to investigate the
Right.
Catholic Church, as they should. This figure includes abuses committed by some 3,000 priests. I mean, wrap your mind around that. One priest is too many. This is 3,000. And I think in Pennsylvania, the grand jury report, it said there were some 2,000
So we're
priests
talking
in the state of
large
Pennsylvania.
armies of abusive priests,
Yeah.
large armies. And when you think of it that way, it blows you away.
Yeah.
It just truly does.
Says, and an unknown number of other people involved in the church. Wrongdoing that Catholic authorities covered up over decades in a systemic manner, according to the president of the commission that issued the report, Jean-Marc Sauvé. So, I mean, then going down, it's a 2,500 page document, very thorough. So this isn't like, just throwing numbers in the air and hoping that one of them sticks. I mean, this is incredibly thorough. 2,500 page document was issued as the Catholic Church in France, like in other countries, seeks to face up to shameful secrets that were long covered up. I would change that word "were" to "still are covered up."
Right.
Victims welcomed the report as long overdue, and the head of the French Bishops' Conference asked for forgiveness from them. All right, okay, here's where my problem arises. All right, the head of the French Bishops' Conference asked I'm asking forgiveness for these misgivings.
You know what is blaring to me is the systemic cover up. There was a
Yeah, it's
system
willful.
to it.
It's
It's
intentional.
willful. They knew what they were doing. When you have code names, code numbers, when you have documents hidden and secretly coded, you know what you're doing. You're
Yeah.
covering up the most violent of crimes that can be committed. I wonder how God views all of this.
I think he'd be flipping tables and making whips out of cords.
Yeah, I think so.
And driving people out,
I think so.
right?
I think.
Jesus did that for people who ripped people off at the temple. This is raping children.
When I think
covering up
of
for it.
learning of a violent crime like that, and you write in a document that you know of it, but you code it and you word it in a certain way, you fold it up and you put it away like you never even knew.
And keep putting those
And you
same
keep adding up and
criminals
adding, yes.
in other positions,
Right. And
in other churches.
It just, I don't know. Growing up, I grew up in a different time as now, and children were to be seen and not heard. And of course, it was worse years before I was born yet. Children were sold as slaves, they were used as slaves, as were women. And I think a lot of that has to do with cultural, how women and children were both treated for years upon years upon years. And now we're seeing a breaking away of that. We're seeing a revolting. a rising up of women and children saying, no more. You are not going to do this to us anymore.
Yeah.
And for sure, you're not going to do it in the name of God Almighty.
Yeah.
And I am so thankful for that. For
Yeah.
those that have had the strength and the courage to speak up and speak out, we will see a breaking of these bonds of criminal actions, of
Yeah.
the silence. We will see it, and it won't be pretty when it all happens.
Yeah, I think it's going
Really.
to take a chipping away like this. You know,
Right.
this report, I think even though not many people are, it's not really on the radar of a whole lot of people worldwide, mark my words, this is a massive blow to the
It
Catholic
is.
Church. The people at the Vatican they're
Oh,
scrambling
boy.
a little bit
Oh, boy.
today.
Yeah. Well, and tie it back to why. I always say follow the money. Follow the money.
Yeah.
When you lose your people who are obedient to you, when you lose the authority over people, especially I know within the bigger churches and especially within the Catholic Church, having grown up under that, you're losing money. Big time money, and that's not going to
Well, I want to. I mean, while we're on that subject, there's this in the news right now, right? So this is
yeah.
going on
Yeah.
with. Let me just resize something here a second. So this is going on. I mean, literally as we speak. There's another vote, the third vote in 3 weeks, by the SBC Executive Committee. This article is by Bob Smetana over at RNS. Excellent article about, so here it's a brief guide to the Southern Baptist meltdown over sexual abuse. And he's talking about this implosion. And let me see if I can find it. Because he talks about the protecting the assets. That is the big issue.
I know
That's
it.
the number one
yeah,
issue right now for
absolutely.
why
Absolutely.
they're not handling the crisis of the pandemic of abuse within the SBC. They refuse to do it. They're all words. It's all a dog and pony show. And I've been saying this for a long time. This whole Caring Well conference, I said from the very beginning, I was like, I don't trust J.D. Greer. I think this is all smoke
I
and
remember
mirrors.
way back when you said that.
And I still
Way
stand by
back.
that.
Yeah.
I stand by what I said
Absolutely.
then, and I stand by it now.
Yep.
Because their actions, they're not nipping it in the bud.
Yeah.
It's all disregarding what people want. There were 18,000 messengers that voted to have this independent investigation and to waive the attorney-client privileges. And a committee of 7 people overturned the votes of 18,000 people.
Yeah.
Like this is what they do,
Yeah.
right? Let's see if I can find this. Last year's annual meeting was canceled due to the pandemic, preventing sexual abuse advocates from forcing the issue. So let sleeping dogs lie is
Right.
what they thought
Yeah.
within the SBC. But as this year's June annual meeting approached, Moore resigned from his SBC post and in a leaked letter accused the SBC leadership of making his life miserable, largely for his advocacy against sexual abuse. When they arrived at the annual meeting in Nashville, Southern Baptists were fed up. More than 18,000 of them showed up, determined to hold the executive committee accountable. They voted overwhelmingly to set up an investigation into how the executive committee handled allegations of abuse and whether abuse survivors had been mistreated. I mean, we're just talking basic stuff. All right, investigate it. We're not even saying that that victims, survivors had been mistreated. We just want you to investigate whether they were. That's a big no.
Right.
Let's see.
We
So
need
what's
to
the
keep
problem?
making waves. We need to keep this 18,000 people. That's not a small group of people that showed up.
And there's going to be more.
Opinion. Exactly
I think that's
right.
massive.
Snowballing.
Yep.
It's going to keep snowballing
This
and
is huge.
snowballing and snowballing. So the more disregard is given to survivors, the more this snowball is going to gain speed, and
Mm-hmm.
it will. At some point, it'll start knocking people over.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, the dominoes are going to tumble. It's just a
Right.
matter of when. So this paragraph here, at least one executive committee member has scoffed at the idea that the group has to follow the lead of the messengers. 15,000 people don't have the power to tell us to do anything. This is what I mean.
Oh,
right?
wow.
This goes back to what I said
Yeah.
about the weddings.
Wow. Wow.
It's this arrogant, jerky attitude
Yeah.
that, well, you're just a little photographer. You're not allowed
Yeah.
to come up here.
Yeah.
You can't be near here. You know, it's this attitude, this culture of flexing the spiritual muscles. And I'm telling you guys, this is going to bite the SBC
Oh, yeah.
in the butt
Big time.
hard.
Yeah.
It's this.
As
They're not going to know.
As it should.
They're not going to
Yeah,
know it's
it's
going to hit
time.
them.
It
So-
is time.
I forget where I saw it in this article, but Bob talked about protecting the assets. That's the big issue.
Well, always
that-
it is. When you have any big issue like this, we always can be safe to say follow the money.
Yep.
Follow the money.
They
And that'll tell you
said
why.
part of the issue with the executive committee is they said, well, if we open up this investigation and we waive attorney-client privileges, that's going to open us up to too many lawsuits and it'll bankrupt the SBC. Well,
So
I mean,
be it. You
right?
know what?
So be it. Yeah,
So
let the truth
be it.
come out.
There has been a lot of spiritual, emotional bankruptcy done to people for years and years and years
Mm-hmm.
in the name of God, and it's time to stop it.
Yeah.
It is.
I mean, I think that's the irony in this is that look at all the people who have been spiritually bankrupted
Yes.
because of their abusers.
Yes. And
And they're saying, well, we can't afford to have, the church at large
okay, will
to be
money,
bankrupted.
will these lawsuits, will giving money remedy the pain people have gone through? No.
No.
But it sure is going to put the sting on the ones that covered it up, and that's how it should be.
And that's why
how
they
it should be.
right, that's why they sue. So they
yes,
stop
exactly
covering
right.
up abuse.
Exactly right. There has to be some kind of penance, shall we say, for wrongdoing. You don't just say, forgive me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
For 70 years, we covered this all up. Please forgive
Yeah.
us.
Oops,
No.
forgive
no,
us.
That wasn't an oopsie at all.
Yeah, my response to forgiving you is no thanks. How about first you start righting these wrongs?
Exactly right.
You start actually protecting victims. You actually stop passing,
Right.
whether it's priests or pastors, stop passing them around. Stop passing the trash. Stop taking known abusers.
I like that phrase.
Stop covering for them. Stop making excuses for them. Stop shuffling them from church to church, giving them glowing recommendations. If they remain silent about why they were fired, stop doing that crap. Stop doing it. For the sake of everybody.
It's time to
Stop doing
open
it.
the blinds and let the light in. That's
Yeah.
all.
So, yeah, I think there's going to be a major reckoning, both in the Catholic and the SBC
Right.
churches. I think once those dominoes fall, I think we're going to see this cascading ripple effect into other denominations.
I hope so, because
And,
it needs to be done. There
it
needs
does.
to be a house cleaning. It needs to be done.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
hang tight, survivors. I know it feels like this endless battle with no movement, but I'm telling you, these two things that are going on right now,
These are
This is
big
huge.
and things
This
are
is
bubbling.
huge.
Yeah, things are bubbling. If you had a truth bomb, Jimmy, what would your truth bomb be today?
yeah, my truth bomb would be aimed towards survivors. Hang in there.
Okay,
I know you
yeah.
guys have been fighting this fight for a long time. You feel disregarded. You probably feel tired. You feel like giving up. Don't give up. Guys, keep being persistent. You are making a difference.
Absolutely.
I'm telling you, these
Your voices
denominations
are being
running
heard.
scared.
Voices are being heard.
Yes.
That's a good thing. Keep up the good work.
Yes. Things will change
Yes.
for the better. All right. Thank you for tuning into this episode, and we'll catch you next round.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. Thank you to our patrons who make the podcast possible. If you found it helpful, please follow on Spreaker and search for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. If you believe in what we do, consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron. and check out the cool rewards our patrons receive. Share with your friends and tell the world. Join us in speaking out on sex abuse so we can change the tides and prevent abuse.